Aha.
Hi, how's the chocolate?
Dark chocolate.
Is it Whittaker's?
Dark almond chocolate.
My ex-boss came over from New Zealand this week, and Thursday was chocolate day. And so she brought those little chocolates, individually wrapped chocolates. And Whittaker's, the LMP one, they had not Freddo Frogs, but there was one called Buzz, which I didn't remember since my childhood. They're marshmallowy on the inside. And what was the other one? Peanut Whittaker's and red licorice with chocolate on the inside. Very nice.
So if anyone's listening and they want to send us food from New Zealand, the Whittaker's LNP white chocolate, please send that. Bring all of that. If you're coming to PAX, just don't pack clothes. Just come with 20 kgs of that chocolate and we will be best friends forever.
I feel like you probably get pulled up at customs for doing something like that. That's probably that's what it's a possession with intent to distribute, I think.
It's less illegal than bringing in a snake.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I mean, you could argue that in court.
I mean, have you guys ever tried accidentally bringing fruit into New Zealand? They basically put you up against the wall. You know, it's
Yep.
You know, you see a banana and you're like, oh, actually, whoops, I have this banana. I'm just gonna throw it out, and then they see you, and then you just there's suddenly just alarms go off, dogs start running out. You know, it gets a bit ridiculous.
When I first moved to New Zealand, they give you fruit on the plane, and there was an apple, and I thought, it's an apple from the plane. I'll put it in my backpack, and then while I'm waiting for the luggage, I can snack on an apple. My word, you would swear I bought in cocaine or something. No, had to pour out all the water, had to throw the apple away, had to have the bag searched, had to have the guy pat me down. What other fruits are you carrying? Calm down.
Did you say I've got some here? Come and check this out. Come and check this spot out. Can you pat this bit down, please?
Gosh, Lee, as soon as Matt comes on.
Well, look, I knew that was going to come up, right? I'm going to try and control myself a little bit, but I will do my best.
Well, for everyone here, welcome to the man, the myth, the legend, the guy in ANZ who has 2 million gamer score, NeoMaster.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for having me on. I very much appreciate being a part of such a historic moment in the podcast history.
Thank you.
And we're glad that we're able to ride your coattails onto glory. We can just mention your name and be like, yeah, Xbox, he's a friend of ours. We can totally get into the club.
This is what I tell everyone. Is like, look, if you want to use my name for clout, for whatever little amount of clout you can get, it's like, look, if I ever die, say that I'm your best friend and get as many days off from work as possible. Like, seriously, just use and abuse, my name and me just as much as possible. Like, I'm perfectly fine with it.
We should get t-shirts printed saying, like, branded as the XboxCast, and then just at the back say, friend of NeoMaster.
In all seriousness, it wasn't until June last year when we met you guys that our name kind of took off and people started listening. So it's a big thanks to Hall of Gamers, really, that our name got out a little bit further than it was getting at the time.
I mean, like I think it was, again, like, so June, again, I don't know the timings for it, but like, again, you kind of guys just sort of exploded onto the scene. I heard great things about what you guys were doing, and it was great to hear another sort of, ANZ Xbox podcast was out there, because again, we just had no idea. And yeah, like it was just, and like, I really love the crossover our communities have had and all that kind of stuff that's happened. And I know Charlotte talked a little bit about this kind of stuff already. But yeah, it's been great. And I love the stuff that you guys do.
Thank you.
We do try to keep it entertaining. We're not as hardcore gamers as you guys are. So we just talk nonsense most of the time, and you guys get into the technicalities of it and gameplays, and we just listen, nodding, going, oh yeah, we didn't think of that.
And Charlotte has to remind you to loosen up and be like, this is still a game for fun.
Yeah, a little bit. Although, to be fair, she was talking about how the street competition is going between the two of us. And she's the one who's the competitive one. That's again, I don't, she's going to throw me under the bus. Like, it was all her idea. I have streaks hidden on my my Xbox profile because I'm the kind of person who like hyperfixates on things like that. So I was like, I don't want to be thinking about that. I just want to I want to do my own achievement thing. And she was like, hey, I see you got a bit of a streak going there, and I'm just right behind you. It would be a real shame if I overtook you. And I was just like, okay, I see that. That's how it's going to be. Okay,
But,
yeah. So
but you step up. So you had that guy who was going to beat you that month. He was going to get, I don't know, he was going to get to 2 million before you or something. And
Yeah.
you went, no. And then for like 2 or 3 months, you just went and just hammered 500,000 score or something. It was ridiculous. And the guy was like, oh, okay.
yeah, so a friend of our show, Mephisto, who's sort of have a bit of a friendly rivalry with, was sort of sitting at that, I think 1.8, 1.9 million. And so it was a bit of a race where I was sitting just above him, and he actually threw down a challenge on True Achievements where you can essentially put a goal and do a challenge against someone else.
Yes.
And he said he was going to overtake me by the end of December. And I think this was in September or something. So we had about 4 months. This was last year. And he was getting close. He was playing a lot of stuff. And I think he got to within about 40,000, and I started getting a bit worried. And decided that no, this is not going to stand. So October, I basically just threw down about 100,000 points, just to really sort of widen that lead a little bit. And then, of course, thanks to you guys, we got through to April.
Yep.
And actually, he had fallen to, I think, 4th place, and there were 2 other people who were sort of sneaking up on me. And so I was sitting at about I was sitting at just under 1.9 right before the start of April, and said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go ham on this achievement challenge, and put, I think I finished, was it over 100 games that month?
Oh yeah.
Something ridiculous like that. And managed to get my 2 million. Well, I got my 1.9 and then my 2 million within like a 2-week period, to give you an idea of how much trash I played.
So much trash. Yeah.
None of it was good. All of it was terrible. And it's the kind of thing where I'm like, this is like my last hurrah. It's like when you have that ridiculous big cheat meal before you do a proper diet, where I'm just like, I'm just gonna just go nuts and just get all out of my system. And like, I haven't really been playing any trash games since then. And it's
You've been playing some great games. The last month was some great games you've been playing.
Yeah, actually, So last month, and again, one of the things I love about you guys' podcast is the event stuff that you do, because it really helps push me, because I can tend to get quite, bogged down in my backlog or what to play and that kind of stuff, and have some direction. And also the community aspect's really nice, because people in our community are just really mean to each other.
Actually, true.
They are.
Yeah, they're just absolutely brutal. But yes, I was like last month, I did all backlog. So I finished like 10 games that I'd already started. Again, backlog, quote unquote. Again, there was a lot of stuff in there that was from like May, but there was a few bits and pieces in there for someone who completes as many games as I do. I still have, 200 or so games that I've just never gone back to finish. And having that sort of incentive worked really, really well for me. It's a lot of like tough stuff that I was just like, I'd been putting off for years and years. But it was really, really good. And now now that I'm past that, I'm like, okay, I'm rewarding myself by basically just doing Game Pass games.
Yeah.
Man.
It's cool. It is like a reward, isn't it? It's kind of like a relax now. I can do what I like this month until next month, and then I'm going to have to find something. Start some games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's it ebbs and flows, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you enjoy the challenges. We've actually, this year was the first year we've had lots of community involvement with that challenge. And I think it's partly to you guys as well. You guys talk about us on your podcast, and you're like, I'm playing this because of this challenge from this other podcast. And people are going, wait a minute. You're not supposed to say that. That's the competition.
I mean, I think that's the thing, is that, like, again, I love the content that you guys do. And I think that the community stuff that you do with competitions, deserves to be shared. And I want to get as many people involved as possible, because, I like competition, and I like, it's also a great opportunity to discuss stuff, and even for self-serving reasons, it's really good for our community to kind of go back to old games. And like from an achievement perspective, a lot of us are very much about completing games and getting a good reason to go back and, not get lost in all the baby games.
Yep.
That's right. While we're on the topic of events, assuming most of the events that we run during the year, which one's your favorite? I can list them if that'll help.
Yeah, I know a few of them. So yeah, back to your backlog and back to backlog 2 are obviously ones that I'm near and dear to me, because I'm a big completionist. So going back and finishing games is great. April Achievement Challenge is obviously,
speaks to you.
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's. I think I'm going to make that my one time where I really just play a lot of trash and try and just keep myself away from that for the rest of the year. So first of all, gives me time to build up to a big enough list.
You must have
For
exhausted
your mental health.
your
Yeah, exactly.
supplies a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm kind of, Charlotte talked a bit about this, about how I'm kind of sweating it a little bit for our streaks because I have to really pick and choose what I'm playing and think about stuff. Where she's like, "Oh, I've got access to every game on earth, so I'm just going to just play a bit of this, play a bit of that." So yeah, it's not exactly a fair competition, but that's fine. But yeah, so I think maybe Back to My Backlog is probably my favorite because it's really getting me to actually do that kind of stuff and kind of keeps me accountable.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yes, keeping people accountable so that if they play a new game, they get crap for it for the rest of the year.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think that's pretty much how that goes. That also kind of fits in with our community spirit as well. So I like to think of some good crossover.
You're feeling it, yeah.
I mean, who would start a new game in Back to Your Backlog month?
Especially like 2 or 3 days before the end as well. It's not even waiting a few days. Like it was crazy.
That's right. And such a lame excuse. I'm sick.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's terrible when people just don't play by the rules that they make themselves.
Everybody else in the community was making so much effort.
Yeah, well, we do what we can because we must. All right.
So Neomaster, why Neomaster as a gaming tag?
It's been so long that I've kind of almost forgotten, but it was kind of was my email when I was a teenager. I think originally it came from some Neopets thing that I did a long time ago. Like again, I would have been like 10. Something like that.
Not the Matrix. You didn't look at Keanu Reeves and be like, "I want to be
huge fan of the Matrix." Obviously, like it's one of the greatest movies ever made. The first one, at least. But so that's probably why I kept it. Because I think it was something where I was like, I used to play Neopets a lot probably primary school, intermediate school. I don't even remember at this point. The years all blur together. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where it started, I think. And then I just kind of kept it. It was originally like Neomaster 2005 because, Neomaster is not the most original name and a bunch of other people already had it. But I was lucky enough that when Xbox did their purge of old gamer tags, before they moved to the new sort of Discord system, I was able to just snatch it up, and luckily, whoever was using it basically hadn't turned on their account in 10 years or whatever. So fantastic. I was very lucky to get the proper name.
Brilliant. I forgot that they did that purge.
No, I didn't. I think everybody rejoiced. It was incredible that they even did it. It's one of those things where you thought this is too good to be true.
Exactly. And having working in sort of a database marketing space, it's interesting to see them kind of make that kind of decision from like a data point of view.
Definitely.
Just be like, oh yeah, no, all this stuff on all these customers, we'll just get rid of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Archive it.
Yeah, exactly.
Less than 10 years, delete.
Exactly. Basically, yeah. You just
Yep.
Yeah. It's an interesting move.
What are you playing at the moment then? I think we should go for this question, Jess.
Yeah, let's go.
What are you playing at the moment? What's your game of the moment?
So my game of the moment, I'm doing Children of Morta because it's leaving Game Pass. So it's been described as Hades Light, which I kind of agree with. It is a sort of roguelite sort of twin stick shooter / melee where you sort of run through dungeons. You play each different family members, basically going through dungeons. It's like 3 different areas. It's quite a sort of a condensed version of that kind of game. Each of the family members plays quite differently. So they'll have sort of, one of them has a bow, one of them has like a big hammer, one of them has a sword and shield, one of them's like a martial art master. And one of them's like a mage. So they all kind of play differently and they have different attacks and styles and kind of ways of playing through it. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. It's something that I've been meaning to get to for ages, and it kind of was like, oh, when is it leaving Game Pass? It's been in there for a long time, so it was kind of inevitable that I'd get to it at some stage.
It leaves next week, does it? The 15th? There's a bunch of games leaving, yeah?
It does, yeah. So I'm kind of rushing through it. I've made it to the last area. So then it's a bit of a grind. So I should get it done in time. This weekend's going to be a big grind for me, but that's been really good. And then in terms of things that I'm actually playing like for fun, I started up Danganronpa, which is Trigger Happy Havoc Danganronpa Anniversary Edition.
Wow,
to be
that's a
precise.
name.
I've never heard of it.
So it's a Game Pass game. It's from Spike Chunsoft. So they do a bunch of sort of visual novel style, like very story based games with kind of minimal gameplay. So they did. There's a bunch of them are on Game Pass. They did like AI, the Somnium Files. They did. They did the Zero Escape, the Nonary games, which is like 2 parts of another series. And this one is basically you are a bunch of high schoolers trapped in a school in a death game, and basically they tell you, the only way to get out is for you to kill someone and get away with it. So when you kill, basically there's a whole thing where it's like, you interact with the other characters, there's a murder, and then you have to investigate the murder by like talking to people and looking at clues, and then you go to a trial. And if the person, you basically have to make sure you figure out who it is, and if you get it right, they get executed. If you get it wrong, they get out, and everyone else dies. So
no pressure.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
wow.
And so I was like, oh, okay, this is really kind of a cool, interesting kind of game. It's very Japanese. It's very Japanese. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I was expecting kind of like a Phoenix Wright, like, oh, you're in the courtroom and you got to do like trial stuff, and it's like, oh, objection and all that stuff. And it's like, I was like, okay, cool, waiting for that. And it was like, okay, no, there are statements flying around, and you have to aim with a reticule and shoot a truth bullet, which is your evidence, at the correct, like the contradictory statement. And like they're moving around, so you have to make sure you hit them. And then also like there are like other statements that get in the way to try to block you. And then you have to play like a rhythm game, and then you have to do like a hangman thing where you got to spell out a word. I was not expecting this like sort of action gameplay elements in this kind of like visual novel where I'd be like, yeah, that person's the murderer. Here's my evidence. It's like, nah, bro, you need to spin a cylinder with like bullets in it and stuff. It was, it's very, very strange. Yeah.
Incredible.
Truth bullets.
But I would definitely recommend it. It's such a strange and interesting game. Like all of their games, I've been trying to push people to kind of play a little bit more of, because they're kind of things that they're on Game Pass. They're kind of unique experiences. And a lot of them are kind of re-releases of older games that just a lot of people potentially have missed because they're only on PC or, or on like the PSP or something like that. Like,
or only
one
in
of those
Japan
things.
or stuff like that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to put another game on my list of games.
I know.
To play.
There's a whole series of games now added to the list.
I know.
Man, amazing.
Oh, wow.
What's your favorite style of game?
See, being an achievement hunter, right, I kind of feel like I have to play everything a lot of the time. I mean, I can tell you what I don't like, right? Like I'm not big into like racing.
Forza,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Forza's always my favorite, right? Love me a racing game.
That was such an amazing moment when you got that award, I guess I'd call it, from the charity.
Sure. Yeah, basically, that punishment. To be fair, I have been playing Forza Horizon 5, and it is actually a fantastic game. To be fair, and that's coming from me, who's not in that demographic at all. My favorite types of games are usually more those visual novel. Like I'm a narrative gamer. Like I like having a story, and I don't like being challenged usually. Like this thing is that like I
in
at
life,
this point,
or just in games.
Well, both, right? I don't like being challenged mentally, even though I might be. But I think that, I played so many games that my reason for playing games has kind of changed from like, I want a challenge in this. I'm like, actually, I'm more just interested in an experience. And so like, if I have the option to play something on the easiest difficulty, I usually will, just because I just kind of want to get through a game and kind of just have the experience and talk about it with people, talk about it on the podcast, talk about it in the Discord, that kind of stuff, and just kind of, get a feel for it in the same way that you want to talk about a TV show or a movie.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of sort of narrative games usually, which is again a lot of genres that kind of fits over, but usually kind of simpler games.
Fantastic.
And now, when did you start listening to us?
So it would have been June, I suppose, right? I kind of got introduced to the Discord and kind of some of the shows. I think it was towards one of the end of this. I'm trying to remember because I went back and listened to a few episodes around kind of because I was trying to understand like the seasonal stuff that you guys were talking about and kind of when you guys took breaks and kind of what the format of the show was.
Like
is that for Cameron? Was that research for Cameron so he could?
Basically, he was like, "Do we need to do seasons for our show?" And I said, "I'm not doing seasons for our show." He's like, "I've got a website." I've done
the graphic though. Look at it.
Yeah. Oh, dude, do not even get me started on how many redesigns Fall of Gamer has had, and the fact that we haven't even hit episode 50 yet.
It's been quiet though for the last month, isn't it?
Oh no, if you like this, I think last week I think he just changed the overlays again.
Okay.
So okay. I mean, it's not a massive change, but they are. He did have to rebuild them.
Of course.
But of course. But no, we love Cameron. He does a fantastic job producing the podcast. But yeah, there's been a lot of changes. So I started listening around then. Unfortunately, I usually can't tune in live, but I do try and catch the VODs or listen to it while I'm at the gym and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been I love the show. you know,
Wait.
new news maybe drags on a little bit with this whole chart business. But you know, but it's always and it's always nice having Simone there to maybe push things along when she's there, or suffering through it. But no, I mean, again, it's some of the thing where it's like I like new news quite a bit because a lot of our podcast is quite news focused in terms of that's where we get a lot of our discussion points from, and kind of what we've been playing is usually quite similar week to week, so we don't focus on that as much anymore. So it's always interesting to hear kind of what your guys' take on the news is and kind of and things that you found that we've missed and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm also just kind of nosy, to be honest.
Oh, so you were giving a stick about giving Isaac stick about his question as well. I listened to your podcast.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Isaac's a question asker extraordinaire. I don't. Yeah, like, to be fair, if it wasn't for him, we probably wouldn't even have a question section left on the podcast because he was holding us up.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, yeah, he started asking us questions, and now we're thinking, where do we put this in the schedule?
Yeah, you guys have quite an interesting setup with how you do the show. So maybe you need to do like a third bit where it's like just question time, and it's like half an hour.
We could. The show is long.
Yeah.
Show's already long.
Some good Patreon content there.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe a Patreon special one, just a question.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, question time.
Yeah, but the thing is, Isaac's not a patron. So
we won't hear the answer.
He can ask the question, he just won't hear the answer for it.
Exactly.
See, that's
we can
right.
allude to it or something, just like half the information to him.
We're overdue for an AMA. So, yep.
Yeah, we might just get AMAs from everywhere, and then the patrons get the AMA answers.
There you go.
Actually, a question is, how do you find you do your video or your movie review stuff, which is Patreon only. How do you find that working?
I mean, it doesn't. Like, that's the thing. Is that, like I'll be 100% honest. No one listens to it. And if I was on my podcast, I'd probably use a lot more colorful language to describe the process. But I think that, like,
thank you.
It's, like we did Lights, Camera, and Action because we got so tight. So just for context, so Lights, Camera, and Action is our movie review podcast that we do for our patrons, where we basically usually take a video game movie that one of us haven't seen.
No, come on, no. So Cameron hasn't seen.
Okay, okay. Usually Cameron hasn't seen. We do a bit of a discussion at the front of it, then we go away, watch the movie, and then record the second bit with our reactions afterwards. And the idea is that we were supposed to be like, okay, we'll record like this on like a Friday after the regular podcast. We'll watch the movie over the weekend, and then we'll do like a follow up either at the end of the weekend or the next week. What usually happens is we record at the beginning of the month. We go, oh no, we haven't finished actually watching this movie and recording the other bit. And so we're like 3 weeks late. And so we're like, well, what did we talk about in the first bit? And it's like, well, we could go back and listen to it, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to basically record it like it's a completely separate podcast and then try and stitch it together. And then I try and stitch it together with some funny clips in the middle from something that's vaguely related. It's one of the things, because it's on Patreon, I don't, it's pretty lo-fi. Like I just keep it like, it's not going out to the wider audience. I don't have to worry too much about copyright and stuff. So I'll usually just put some, some trash music at the front and the back of it.
I thought you were implying that you put less effort into it, and I'm thinking, but these guys pay for you.
I mean, it's audio only, so it's a little bit easier to work with, right? We don't do the video part for it, so which means I can chop and change quite a bit, which is nice. And to be fair, like almost no one listens to it, to be honest. Like we don't have a lot of patrons. I think we've only got like sort of 14, 15. When I look at these stats for it, it's like maybe 1 or 2 people listen to it, which is like fine because we do it because, like you said, Cameron, so many times, Charlotte and I, or, Kirby and I, or you and I, or all of us have had discussions being like, oh man, this is just like that movie, or this reminds me of this. And Cameron's like, what? I'm sorry, what? And we're like,
and these are not these are popular movies.
I was like, yes, The Godfather, Cameron. Have you heard of it? And he's like, yeah, I've heard of it. I think they made a video game about it. And I was like, oh my God. So it's like, okay. So, but obviously to keep it video game related, we decided to start with video game movies, but we're looking at branching out a little bit. I think our next one on the chopping block is Scott Pilgrim, which again, not technically a video game movie, but sort of, video game
comic movie.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's so fantastic.
I was always because Carl's always talked about doing something for the Patreons, but I don't know if it will work because we have the same numbers. We have like 10 or 11 Patreons.
Yeah,
you just need the numbers, don't you?
You really do. I mean, I've also been talking about like making some of the older episodes that we did back when we were in RGS are free at the moment. So we're looking at maybe ungating some of the old content to try and get some new people in to maybe listen to it. But like, it's not a draw. It's not really a draw for us. It's kind of just something we do for fun. And like, people support the podcast because they want to support the podcast, right?
Yes, that's right.
And because like we say, like at least on Hall of Gamers, basically break even, maybe just make a little bit on top of that, depending on the month. Because you got to pay for Zoom, you got to pay for hosting, you got to pay for equipment,
the competition,
and competitions as well. So it's like, okay, they support us because they want to support us, and we try to give them as much back as we can. But we know that it's definitely not, of equal value, quote unquote. It is more a donation than anything.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Mr. Lee.
Can we ask what's the first game you ever played?
First game I ever played was Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1, the original.
Oh, okay.
What a great game to start with.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Also brutally hard.
Yes.
But the thing is, I didn't actually get into gaming until quite late, quote unquote late, in terms of like my childhood. My parents tried to hide me away from that. Look where that got them. But yeah, they tried to try to get me into doing other things other than playing video games. So like my friends had video games and stuff, and I wasn't super into it. But yeah, one time my dad rented back when you could rent consoles. And he rented a PlayStation 1, and we tried Crash Bandicoot, and it was like my mind just was blown. And then it was like the whole PlayStation 1 catalog was kind of where I sort of grew up. So it was Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, the Spyro trilogy. Trying to think what else. I mean, those were the main ones. I was also broke, so I had about 5 games, but
Just kept playing them, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's kind of where I got my start. But I didn't really, PlayStation 2 is kind of where it all kind of exploded, and then 360, obviously, with the achievements, kind of just cemented me as never leaving the house.
And that's why you play Xbox, is it? Purely because of the achievements?
So it was actually because of a podcast, funnily enough. So back with video games, that's the one. Yeah, nailed it. So when I was about 15 or so, or 14 or so, I was kind of on YouTube, just kind of looking for things to listen to and watch, because again, YouTube was kind of exploding, and so there was a podcast called NoobTube, which was one of the first video podcasts that was ever created, and like they were and they were also like independent, so they were like you and I, that we were just people sitting in front of they were sitting in a room together. They were actually technically game developers or like game engineers, but they didn't talk about what their work, but they just kind of sat there. They're like, we just came into the office. They had boxed wine. And they were just really filthy.
Classy,
like they were just like
classy.
They would, yeah. So the joke was they would do like a ding, at the beginning of every episode, but they were like super like they were from the Bay Area. They were really like trashy and like really sweary, and like 14, 15-year-old me was the funniest thing I'd ever heard in my entire life.
Of course.
Right? And I was like, this is amazing. So I joined their community, and I was playing PlayStation 2 at the time, and then that's when they started talking about achievements, and they were very competitive, and they were like, I was playing Guitar Hero 2. And it's like, I'm winning the Iron Gamer Challenge, which is kind of their competition for being the first to finish a game. And it's like, I'm winning the Iron Gamer Challenge. And the other guy's like, actually, no, I came into work late today, so I just jumped up and finished the game on medium before, and I didn't update the table, so I figured I'd just surprise you on the show that I'm just completely destroying you. And that kind of aspect and that kind of community is kind of what shaped me to be the kind of to do the podcast that I do, and kind of the community that I try to cultivate, and kind of the way I play games.
Okay.
So
it's all their fault, really.
Is this podcast is obviously not this podcast you started, though, is it? It's kind of changed
Yeah.
people and kind of format and stuff over time.
So originally we were part of Real Gamer Score. So that was the community I was involved with. So that was started by Spaceman, Kirby, Chin Doctor, and Professor Pluto, Alex, and Warren, and a few other people, which is again kind of a part of it remnants for another podcast. Again, it's all sort of cyclical. So they started a podcast around achievements. I started listening to it. They invited me into the community after I went up against Kirby in the head-to-head on True Achievements. And he's like, hey, you're obviously very into achievements, very competitive. Do you want to come join our community? And the rest is kind of history. I joined as kind of a guest because I was just like, I did the thing where I remember I was listening to you guys talk to Charlotte, and you were like talking about how you were like, the way you want a podcast to work is you want to say something and then have the people listening to you shout at you. But even though they're not there, right?
Yep.
That's how I am with podcasts, right? That's where I'm like, I would love to give my opinion on this. I would love to get in there and talk about this. And I was like, well, why don't I just do it, right?
Yep.
And so eventually I bullied them enough to get me to guest on the podcast. And then as their sort of life priorities changed, and, it's like Tarragon had to step away for a bit, and then Alex had his kid, and Kirby got very busy with work over COVID. They asked me to host, and then eventually I ended up being the main host for it. And we got Cameron on as well as a guest for a few bits, and then he kind of joined as host, and then it was basically turned into Cameron and I's show. And so it was a little bit of an awkward thing where it was like, we were kind of doing this thing, but it wasn't really ours. And so then we got an opportunity to basically go off and start our own podcast, which is Hall of Gamers. And that's kind of where we're at now. And so we're nearly a year into it, which is scary to think
Awesome,
about.
isn't it?
Yeah. So when does your anniversary come up?
Yeah, that'll probably be, actually might even be like this month, I think, actually, come to think of it. Because we have missed a few weeks here and there around Christmas and that kind of stuff. And we've had a few specials. So yeah, I think we're on we did 44 last night. So probably towards the end of the month, I think we're actually probably going to be hitting our anniversary. So
Fantastic. Well, feel free to have us on if you want.
oh, we'd love to. We'd love to. Absolutely. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it, right,
Again, I haven't planned anything. I'm sure Cameron will say that everything's up to him, and if he didn't do it, nothing would get done. But absolutely, to be fair, I hadn't even thought about it, so we definitely should do something.
Well, no, if it helps you feel better, we always forget anniversaries.
We missed our anniversary, 5th year anniversary last week before, wherever it was.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Did we?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. It was at end of June. Our 5th anniversary was end of June.
Yep.
Yeah, missed it completely. So
Amazing. Now, before we let you go, you got to give us your controversial gaming opinion. Get yourself cancelled.
Yeah, most games are better on easy. Like having games being difficult is not like there's no benefit to games being difficult. I think challenging games is massively overhyped. I would say like Dark Souls is one of my favorite games of all time, right? And it's like a challenging game, right? But even then, like people are like, oh no, they put an easy mode in it, they'll ruin the vision. No, make games as easy as possible. Let people cheat. Let people put God mode on. Who cares? Let people enjoy games how they want to enjoy
the game. Yeah,
exactly.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I always put on easy. I can't be asked to fight games and waste my time.
Yeah, there's got to be a scale. There's got to be the options. Give them
the options. But if it's story mode, then
if you want to challenge, you can go hard.
Every game should have a story mode where you can basically just walk through the game and just destroy everything and just you have your male empowerment fantasy, quote unquote.
Yeah, and just feel incredible. That's what games are for, anyway.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining, Matt.
Well,
thank
you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it. You guys are fantastic, and I love the work you guys do. And I'm gonna basically jump straight back into the Twitch and just watch the rest of this bit anyway. So
cool.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It was fantastic having you on, and we'll see you all later.
See you later.
See you.
Catch you.